No one warns you about the hunger. They warn you about wrinkles. They warn you about time. They warn you about regret. But they never warn you about the hunger, the kind that grows quietly as the years pass, the kind that doesn't disappear when you succeed, the kind that no achievement can feed. Before we go deeper, hit subscribe and like the video. This is DepthRealm, where we expose the patterns people don't want to face. Emotional hunger doesn't begin loud. It begins subtle. A small restlessness. A background dissatisfaction. A sense that something is missing even when everything looks right. In youth, emotional hunger is masked by stimulation. Attention is abundant. Validation is frequent. Possibility feels endless. Your nervous system is constantly fed small emotional rewards. Texts, looks, flirtation, novelty, anticipation. You don't learn how to nourish yourself because the world does it for you. So hunger doesn't feel like hunger. It feels like excitement. And excitement is a poor teacher. As time moves forward, the environment changes. The attention thins. The novelty fades. The feedback loop weakens. And for the first time, the nervous system has to confront itself without constant stimulation. That's when the hunger appears. Not physical hunger. Not sexual hunger. Emotional hunger. The need to be seen. To be chosen. To be desired intentionally rather than incidentally. To matter deeply to someone who isn't required to care. And this hunger gets worse with age for one simple reason no one explains. The coping mechanisms that worked early in life stop working later. In your 20s, distraction is enough. Social life. Work stress. Romantic chaos. The future itself feels nourishing. In your 30s, distraction becomes thinner. Life stabilizes. Routines form. The future stops feeling infinite and starts feeling defined. And after that, the hunger has nowhere to hide. Here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. Emotional hunger grows with age because the cost of unmet needs increases. When you're young, loneliness feels temporary. When you're older, loneliness feels permanent. When you're young, rejection feels replaceable. When you're older, rejection feels cumulative. When you're young, heartbreak heals fast. When you're older, heartbreak feels expensive. So the hunger sharpens. And most people respond to this hunger the wrong way. They try to silence it instead of understand it. They work more. They scroll more. They date more casually. They lower standards in secret while raising them publicly. They chase validation instead of nourishment. But validation doesn't feed emotional hunger. It numbs it. And numbness always wears off. This is why emotional hunger becomes more dangerous with age. Because the stakes are higher and the margins are thinner. You can't afford endless trial and error anymore. You can't afford relationships that go nowhere. You can't afford years lost to indecision. And your nervous system knows it, even if your mind pretends not to. This is why so many people become more anxious as they age, not less. Why they become more sensitive to rejection. Why they crave reassurance but resent dependence. Why they want intimacy but fear vulnerability. The hunger pulls in opposite directions. You want closeness, but closeness risks loss. You want connection, but connection requires exposure. You want to be chosen, but being chosen means surrendering control. And control feels safer when time feels scarce. Here's the truth no one told them. Emotional hunger worsens with age because emotional avoidance compounds. Every year you avoid deep attachment, your tolerance for it decreases. Every year you delay vulnerability, it becomes more frightening. Every year you choose independence over interdependence, connection feels heavier. The nervous system adapts to whatever you practice. Practice distance long enough and closeness feels foreign. Practice self-reliance long enough and receiving feels uncomfortable. Practice emotional armor long enough and softness feels unsafe. So when people finally want connection, they're ill-equipped to handle it. This is why many relationships formed later in life feel strained. Not because the people are wrong, but because the hunger is desperate and the skills are underdeveloped. Hunger without skill becomes pressure. Pressure kills attraction. This is the quiet tragedy. People don't become lonely because they're unlovable. They become lonely because they never learned how to feed themselves emotionally in healthy ways. They outsourced nourishment to attention, to romance, to achievement, to distraction. And when those sources dry up, the hunger roars. Another truth no one likes to admit: emotional hunger gets worse with age because identity becomes rigid. When you're young, you're flexible. You adapt easily. You can reinvent yourself without much loss. As you age, identity calcifies. You become who you are. And changing costs more. So when emotional hunger demands growth, softening, opening, risking, trusting, the ego resists. The ego says, "I shouldn't need this. I've earned my independence. I've already been hurt enough. I'm too old to start over." But hunger doesn't respect pride. It doesn't care about ideology. It doesn't negotiate with narratives. It just grows. This is why some people grow bitter with age instead of wise. Not because life wronged them, but because hunger went unaddressed. They blame the world. They blame dating. They blame the opposite sex. They blame time. But hunger isn't caused by others. It's revealed by absence. Here's the part that cuts deepest. Emotional hunger often peaks precisely when people believe they should be done wanting. When they think they should be content. When they think they should be grateful. When they think wanting more makes them weak. So they suppress it. And suppressed hunger doesn't disappear. It leaks. It leaks into irritability, into control, into criticism, into emotional withdrawal, into passive aggression, into numbness. This is why emotional hunger is misdiagnosed as depression so often. Not because the person is broken, but because the need is unnamed. Humans are wired for attachment, for shared meaning, for being known. Age doesn't remove that wiring. It intensifies it. Because time strips away illusions. The illusion that work will be enough. The illusion that freedom will satisfy. The illusion that solitude equals peace. Solitude can be peaceful, but only when it's chosen, not endured. And that's the difference no one warns them about. Chosen solitude nourishes. Endured solitude starves. As years pass, endured solitude becomes heavier. This is why emotional hunger is often strongest in people who appear most self-sufficient. The ones who don't need anyone. The ones who are fine alone. The ones who have everything together. Because they learn to survive without nourishment. Survival isn't fulfillment. And survival eventually exhausts the nervous system. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Emotional hunger worsens with age because time removes buffers. Youth buffers loneliness with hope. Middle age removes that buffer. Hope becomes calculation. Possibility becomes probability. And probability forces confrontation. If you haven't built deep bonds by then, the hunger becomes louder because the window feels narrower. This doesn't mean love disappears. It means the cost of avoidance becomes visible. And many people respond by doubling down on defenses. They become more selective but less open. More guarded but more needy. More independent but more lonely. This contradiction creates internal tension. They want closeness but punish vulnerability. They want intimacy but fear dependence. They want to be chosen but avoid choosing. And hunger grows in contradiction. The people who manage this transition do something different. They stop confusing hunger with weakness. They stop shaming themselves for wanting. They stop pretending independence replaces connection. They stop outsourcing nourishment to validation. They learn to feed themselves emotionally through regulation, presence, and honest connection. They soften instead of hardening. They open instead of guarding. They choose depth over protection. And the hunger changes. It doesn't vanish. It becomes manageable. It becomes directional instead of desperate. The ones who don't adapt keep chasing substitutes. They chase attention. They chase excitement. They chase novelty. They chase the past. But substitutes never satisfy hunger. They only delay it. This is why emotional hunger feels cruel with age. Because the body knows what it needs and the mind resists giving it. The final truth is simple and unforgiving. Emotional hunger gets worse with age because unmet needs compound. And the longer they're ignored, the louder they become. No one warned them because society benefits from distraction, from productivity, from independence narratives. But the nervous system doesn't care about narratives. It cares about connection. And connection delayed becomes connection demanded. That's the hunger. And once you see it for what it is, not a flaw, not a failure, not a weakness, but a signal, you stop running from it. Because hunger isn't the enemy. Avoidance is. See the pattern. Protect your energy. This is DepthRealm.